There aren't a lot of modern games out there that do what Vanquish does, and it's interesting that it turns out that way, seeing as how Vanquish is largely just an amalgamation of elements from different action games thrown together with an over-the-top high-energy Japanese exterior. That is a description you could give to several games, yet somehow Vanquish still manages to be its very own beast. It's definitely true that it lacks a particularly original story, the existence of very much variety in its gameplay, and a main character who can be described as anything more than a low-rent Solid Snake. But despite all of these things that would normally be, and often are, regarded as flagrant shortcomings, Vanquish is a game that stands firmly on its own two robotic feet as an unapologetic love letter to extravagant, blistering action with Japanese flair. As a result, those who played it and really gave it a chance generally have a favorable opinion of its action game being played on fast-forward style. Even today, many years after its launch, it is still regarded as a great action experience and one of the better examples of its genre from its generation. Logic would follow that a sequel would have come out by now, or would at least be announced and perhaps on its way, but no such luck. As of the writing of this article and the recording of this voiceover, no sequel to Vanquish has been officially announced, nor are there any real substantial rumors floating around that should give anybody any real reason to think that one is on the horizon. This seems a little bit odd, especially when you consider how popular the developer Platinum Games has become since making the game. So it's not unreasonable to ask, just where exactly the hell is Vanquish 2? Because of the pseudo-niche that Vanquish has decided to occupy so intensely and narrowly, it has suffered the fate that many games do when devoting so much of their experience to a single lane, which is to say that it was loved by few and ignored by many when it was launched. But despite its rather slow start, over the years, Vanquish has slowly gained more and more fans as the game has gotten cheaper, easier to find, and word of its excellence has crept into different corners of the gaming community at large. As a result of this, Vanquish has seen relaunches on PC and 8th gen gaming consoles that boast a much nicer 60 frames per second, that complement the fast-paced action much better than the PS3 and 360's version's 30 frames do. Releasing remastered versions and optimized ports of games on successive consoles is a popular way for publishers to test the waters for potential sequels. As we touched on earlier, Vanquish does have a very narrow focus on what it wants to be and who it wants to please. This approach made it fairly divisive amongst mainstream video game critics. Some loved it, some hated it, but most outlets gave it middling to slightly above average scores. Given that the game was not cheap to produce, that was likely not the outcome Sega and Platinum had in mind. With lots of expensive effects, plenty of polish, Sega needed the game to be a commercial hit, and it just wasn't. This alone will spell trouble for a game ever getting a sequel in just about any scenario. It would also get roundly criticized for its paper-thin plot, two-dimensional characters, short length, and lack of reasons to replay it. Of course, while somebody like me would argue that games don't need to have all those things in order to be good, or even outstanding, I, as well as other huge fans of Vanquish, are but a drop in the ocean when it comes to the different expectations that are out there. And Vanquish just didn't cut the mustard with enough people to shine as brightly as it could have if more attention had been paid in those areas. This is likely why Sega has been trepidatious at best with the Vanquish IP. You can buy it on its own digitally though, so perhaps there's more to that than I'm giving it credit for. On top of that, Platinum Games, the developer behind Vanquish, is also in a very different place than they were 10 years ago. Back in the 7th gaming generation, Sega and Platinum were pretty tight. They made Mad World, Vanquish, and Anarchy Reigns together. But now they don't really need Sega. After hits like Nier Automata, they're in a league of their own. and likely they're all hands on deck with other things. While it is true that sequels are made all the time without the involvement of the original development team, and if Sega really wanted to move forward with Vanquish 2, they absolutely could, but with a game so specific in its tone, and so focused on its own identity, not having Mikami or anybody from Platinum around to at least advise with development is likely another major thing that makes the case for Vanquish 2 that much shakier for Sega to make. So, while Vanquish 2 does suffer from mixed opinions and a narrow market, its much bigger problem is the success of those who made the first one, those who made Vanquish, and would have to be involved with keeping a sequel in line with the tone of the original, have just simply moved on to bigger and better things. It's a problem you love to see though, as the team at Sega all deserve the success that they've seen since 2010, and it's hard to not be happy to see them elevated so much, even if it does mean that some IPs, whether they deserve it or not, will get left behind. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.